The weekend when a spectator at the celebrity golf tournament in Lake Tahoe told him to watch out for Justin Herbert. Well, Mahomes responded with, "I'll believe it when I see it." Actually, he said it backwards, but you get what we're saying here. You get the point. All right, Baldy and Lige Mahomes cleared the air, saying that he has nothing but respect for Justin Herbert. He was doing some good old-fashioned trash talk. You don't have to run it back, Mahomes. Say it with your chest. He's not wrong. Baldy, should Mahomes, though, be looking out for Herbert?
Well, I think Kansas City is, firmly entrenched as the favorites of the AFC West. Mahomes has come out earlier this year. He didn't walk this one back. He said, "I'm going to go 20-0 this year. I don't want to lose a game." But, Justin Herbert's first start in the NFL was at SoFi Stadium against the Chiefs, and it took a 58-yard Harrison Butker field goal in overtime to beat Patrick Mahomes, to beat those Chargers. So Mahomes knows what Justin Herbert can do. He was just trash talking to all the fans that were out there.
Yeah, speaking of that game, Baldy, that was his first start. He literally knew minutes before going out on the field that he was going to start that game, and all he did was throw for over 300 yards. And as you said, that game went into overtime. Now, I'm not going to say the Chargers are going to take the crown of the AFC West, but if I was the Kansas City Chiefs, I might be slightly looking over my shoulder just because of what Justin Herbert brings. Over 4,300 yards passing as a rookie, 31 touchdowns to only 10 interceptions. And if you look at his weapons, you got Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler. He got guys you can get the ball to that can make plays in the open field. And then they bring over Brandon Staley, who comes from the Rams. They had the #1 defense. So he's going to fix that defense. So, again, I don't believe that Kansas City is getting knocked off the AFC West crown, but they should slightly look over their shoulder.
I'm not mad seeing a little edge there from Patrick Mahomes. We know him to be like that button-up guy. Now go ahead, talk that talk, because he definitely puts up the numbers to back it up. All right, guys.
Talk bad to him, Patrick.
Yeah, exactly. Still to come on NFL Total. With more details on the arrest this morning of Richard Sherman. Ian, what is the latest on this?
That's right. Richard Sherman, the star cornerback, the current free agent, was booked late last night, the wee hours of the morning, by Redmond, Washington Police Department. He is now facing, according to these police department, 4 charges, including burglary, domestic violence. This all followed a single car accident late last night. Sherman then, according to the police department, again, tried to break into his in-laws' house, was not able to do so. At that point, police were called. According to the police, he resisted arrest. A canine was then called to try to subdue him, and Sherman sustained minor injuries. According to the police, he is the only person who sustained injuries. Now, 4 charges, as I mentioned, burglary, domestic violence, resisting arrest, 1 involving the damage that he apparently caused to the door of his in-laws, and then the burglary, domestic violence charge, of course. No injuries other than Sherman. He did not assault anyone. This, according to the police, despite domestic violence being in the charge, he did not assault anyone. Sherman is also being looked into for the hit and run that started all this. He is currently still in jail because, according to the police department, he cannot get out of jail until he sees a judge and bail is set. That has not happened yet. One other thing I want to mention, there was a somewhat disturbing 911 call where Richard Sherman and his wife allude to some of the personal troubles that he is currently going through. My understanding is his close friends have been well aware of this and actually visited Sherman's house on a couple different occasions this offseason to try to intervene and help Richard Sherman deal with what he's dealing with personally. Obviously, the culmination of this was this incident that we are hearing about now. And obviously, as we know more, we will let you know.
Yeah, and Ian, a story that has left the sports world obviously very shocked and confused. Sherman's wife also looking to set just a bit of clarity there. She released this statement to Bob Condotta of the Seattle Times. He said, "At this time, we're going to make no statement except that he didn't harm anybody. My kids were not harmed in this incident. He's a good person, and this is not his character. We're doing all right, just trying to get him out. I want people to know no one was injured." Sherman also is a vice president of the NFL Players Association Executive Committee. Just a very, very heavy story here. All right, Ian, so Thursday is the deadline to finalize a contract with franchise players. Where do we stand with some of the notable guys?
Well, we'll start with one of the biggest names who is currently on the franchise tag. That is Allen Robinson, the Bears star receiver. Got the franchise tag last year. Expected to play on the franchise tag again this year. Sources say the two sides are not expected to reach a long-term extension. So $18 million for Robinson. Of course, the team and Robinson had extension talks all throughout last season. Now up against the deadline, not going to do a deal. Another player not expected to reach a deal by tomorrow's deadline, Chris Godwin, the standout receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Just a massive part of this offensive machine. Someone is key in the Bucs' plans. This is something where they have wanted to do an extension with him for some time. Going to continue to work into next offseason to try to do a deal similar to what they did with pass rusher Shaq Barrett. And then finally, Brandon Scherff, the all-pro guard for the Washington football team. Similar to Allen Robinson, got one tag, then got the next tag. Now is expected to play in the $18 million tag for the 2021 season.
And keeping track of all of this over the next 24 hours. Thank you, Rep Sheet. Today's special guest analyst played 10 seasons in the NFL, known for getting to the quarterback and for his opinions on the current state of the league. Let's welcome in Lige Douzable to the show. He's alongside Brian Baldinger and Cynthia Freeland. What's up, everybody? Hey, Lige, so happy to have you here. Thanks for coming on.
Of course, MJ. It's good to be on here with you guys.
Okay, guys, so the deadline to sign franchise tag players as we get into this first chat to long-term deals is tomorrow, as we know. We heard Ian there. But let's get your take on some of these guys, starting with Marcus May and the Jets. Baldy, do you agree with not signing May to a long-term deal here?
Well, I think his general manager is going to have a hard time doing it. Be honest with you. I mean, I thought Marcus stepped up in the absence of Jamal Adams, who was traded to Seattle. He really had his best season. But, Joe Douglas, the general manager, has been around Ed Reed. He was in Philadelphia around Brian Dawkins. I just think when he thinks of a high-priced safety, he needs a safety to take the ball away and to change the game. And I'm not sure that he feels that way about Marcus. He might. But if he did, they would show him a long-term contract. And that has yet to happen. I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, Baldy, I believe that they have to give this guy a long-term contract. If you hear what Robert Saleh said, he was real adamant in saying that we're trying to work out a deal with Marcus May. Because last year on the Jets, Marcus May was the best player on the team. Not just the defense, on the team. Quentin Williams was probably right behind him, but he was the best player on the team. If you saw him on film, all over the field, 80-plus tackles, 11 pass breakups at the safety position, which is unheard of. 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, and he fits perfectly in this Robert Saleh defense. I believe Saleh will use him as he used Jimmy Ward in San Francisco, a guy that's going to cover the tight ends, take the tight end out of the game. He's also really good in coverage in the post, and he's a sure tackler. He fits perfect for Robert Saleh and this Jets defense.
When I look at what goes on with Marcus May, I look at kind of everything going on around him. And if you look at the corners, none of those defensive backs, corners, or safeties ranked anywhere near in the top, 30, 45, other than Marcus May last season. But I think that the thing here is all about leverage. Remember, the cap's going up next season, so I don't actually think this is a slight. It's a brand new head coach, defensive-minded head coach, who could really use him well. And by the way, the franchise tag of $10.6 million, that makes him safety number 10. So it's not like he's not going to get paid anything this season. And he's only in his 4th season. This is going to be an okay situation for him. Sign, don't sign. I think he's not being disrespected whatsoever.
All right, so as we continue down this list here, Allen Robinson has been the one bright spot on the Bears offense the last couple of seasons. Lige, what are the Bears thinking here?
I honestly don't know what they're thinking, MJ. The time to pay Allen Robinson was last year. He should have been paid going into this season. There hasn't been a lot of consistency on the offensive side of the ball for Chicago, but he's been the one person that's consistent year in and year out. Back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons with quarterbacks Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles. No matter who's at quarterback, this guy shows up week in and week out. One of the best receivers in the NFL for going up, catching those 50-50 ball, contested balls. He shows up week in and week out. I don't know what Ryan Pace is doing for the Chicago Bears. You just drafted your young quarterback in Justin Fields for the future. Why not get him a receiver that could be his safety blanket, a guy that he can really rely on and grow with the next 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I agree with you, Leger. And, when you watch him, he's only 27 years old. I mean, he's been in the league 7 years, but, coming out of Penn State, he came out early. and he's put up big numbers, 102 catches this year. I think he's a true number one receiver. And that means he can beat your best corner. He can win in the red zone. He can win on third down. When you need a play, you're looking for Allen Robinson. And eventually this team is going to get turned over to Justin Fields. And one thing Justin Fields knows, playing at Ohio State, he knows what a great receiver looks like. They've been turning him out there regularly. It'd be nice if he could have a true number one to kind of grow and build with in Chicago.
Well, where the franchise tag stands right now would make him the 9th highest paid wide receiver for this season. I totally agree. He should have been paid prior to this season. But looking at what's going on here, I actually think Allen Robinson has the leverage here. If you look to see how many of the passes that have been thrown his way have actually been catchable, PFF even agrees with me. It's something like 64%, one of the lowest for any wide receiver in the league. He's a true number one. He makes his quarterbacks look better. If it's not the Bears next season, if it's not the Bears this season, it will be somebody else. And again, that cap's going up. So I think Allen Robinson has a ton of leverage here.
All right, as we pivot to a team who basically re-signed everybody and their mama, but no long-term deal expected for Bucs receiver Chris Godwin. Lige, is this the right move?
I think it ultimately is the right move, MJ, just because they really have no money left. Like you just said, they signed everybody and their mama. They signed Shaq Barrett back. They signed everybody back. And if you look at the Buccaneers, most of their guys in free agency took less money to come back to run it back to try to win another Super Bowl. And it seems that Chris Godwin's all right not getting his deal done yet because he wants to be on this team and win another championship. But I don't know how long he's going to feel that way. Also, if you look at the Bucs roster, they got some young receivers behind them, and Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson that played really well in spots for the Bucs last year. So if they have to let him part after this year and they potentially win another Super Bowl, I think the Bucs will be all right, and I think he'll be all right. But it looks like he really wants to stay. He's willing to take less money to stay, but we don't know how much he's willing to take.
Yeah, you can only finagle the cap so much, and at 15.9, he is number 15 in terms of wide receiver salary, so it's not like he's not getting paid anything here, and the opportunity to win will probably exceed his necessity to sign a long-term deal in order to be happy. And also, I'm telling you, this is a guy on the free market next season. I think this is a very valuable receiver. I think all of these guys should kind of be happy that the franchise tag and that guaranteed money is happening for them, because I don't know if they would have gotten it in the open market given the constraints with the cap this season.
I mean, all that and then some. Remember, I had Chris Godwin right here on the show shortly after they won the Super Bowl, and he told us directly, I will do what it takes to stay in Tampa.
Pass game, but where do you see the nature of the back of the running back position going? Because me personally, I think that guys like you will make a resurgence because linebackers are getting smaller, defensive linemen are getting more agile. You know what I mean? Even the offensive linemen are changing to a degree, and I think that physical style will make its way back. But I'm interested to see kind of where you see the position going.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think, where we are now, we are in a position where you have more of that scat back type. Mm-hmm. You get a guy that has 140 carries, and we throwing a ball which they call it long handoffs. But you look at guys like Derrick Henry, Cooks, Ezekiel Elliott, and it reminds you that, hey, you know what? You can get it done this way as well, playing that physical north and south. We're going to run the ball down your throat as well. And when you get into the playoffs, that's what you always see that. Like you always see that you got that back that's in there and they're pounding the ball, running the ball north and south. So I think it'll always be a situation where that is presented. And like you touched on with how these linebackers are smaller, they're more agile, and you're going to get to the point where they're going to be like, you know what? Okay, our best option is to
just run right at them.
Frustrate these guys, because these guys are too fast right now.
You mentioned a few guys. Who do you look at in today's guys where you're going, yeah, that guy's got it?
Okay, definitely got to give Derrick Henry his respect and his due, without a doubt. I like Barkley, Saquon Barkley. I think I think he's going to be special. There's a couple things that, I'll be talking to him about that I see in his game that I feel like help him come from
He needs
here.
to trust his size a little bit. He's bigger than what he thinks he is. You know what I mean?
That's one thing.
Get up in there, man.
Yeah, that's one thing. I like Ezekiel Elliott. I know he get a lot of, slack because the offensive line he has, but, watching him too and, seeing how he works and stuff, I know that contribute to his success as well. I like Alvin Kamara. I like the young guy down in Oakland, Jacobs.
Oh, Josh is a
Jacobs.
runner, man. He can run, man. He's a good runner, man.
I like him. So I want to see what he's going to be able to do coming into this next year.
I mean, Adrian Peterson certainly one of the best to do it and toughest to bring down, no doubt. So, guys, let's talk about the toughest running backs to defend. And, Baldy, I have a feeling I know where you're going here.
Well, I think you got to start with the king, MJ. Derrick Henry. I mean, if Marvel Studios was smart, they would create a superhero based on Derrick Henry. Because physically, when I look at him eye to eye, and he's bigger than me. And, his greatest strength is his size. He's got breakaway speed, obviously. We have seen that with 99-yard runs. But you can't physically get to his body. You can't tattoo him. You can watch his 800 touches over the last 2 years, and nobody has blown him up. Nobody takes him off his feet. And so, everybody says the same thing. Every week, 8-man fronts, we got to gang tackle him, we got to put hats on him, bodies to him. But it's hard to get to his body. He is a Marvel superhero, and I think he just keeps marching on.
Yeah, I agree with that, Baldy. He's one of the best backs in all of football, but my pick might surprise a lot of people. Let's go to the Seattle Seahawks, Chris Carson. This guy is the definition of tough, right? When defensive coordinators are planning to play the Seattle Seahawks, they're telling their safeties and linebackers, you better buckle up your chin strap, bring your big boy pads, because this guy will punish you. The thing that separates him from a lot of backs, he's 5'11", 225 pounds, but he has lower body strength. You can see it in a lot of these clips. Defensive linemen are bouncing off this guy. I asked Carlos Dunlap, what makes Chris Carson so tough to defend? He says it's because he's a decisive runner and he will run you flat over. Also, I said, I believe he's a tone setter for this offense, right? When he gets going, the Seattle Seahawks get going. He said definitely he's a tone setter on our offense, and we actually feed off of that on defense. So Chris Carson, a physical guy, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in 2018, 2019, would have had that this past year if he hadn't got hurt.
All right, I hear you guys. I'd like to also throw in the mix young Josh Jacobs, who we heard Adrian Peterson mention there. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He was one of 4 guys here for your chance to win and attend Super Bowl 56 here in Los Angeles. Let's get you caught up on the latest headlines from today. Richard Sherman was arrested this morning outside of his wife's parents' house in a Seattle suburb. The free agent cornerback is facing multiple charges, including burglary, domestic violence. Sherman's wife, Ashley, said that no one was physically harmed. Sherman was denied bail, which is customary until he can appear in front of a judge. That is set for Thursday afternoon. The Titans announced that 3 men will go into their Ring of Honor. The franchise's all-time winningest head coach, Jeff Fisher, who led the team to their only Super Bowl appearance. Bum Phillips, who coached the Houston Oilers in the Love Ya Blue era and led them to back-to-back AFC championship games. And the man who hired Fisher, GM Floyd Reese, will be enshrined on September 26th against the Colts. All right, there are still some notable free agents available as teams are preparing for the start of training camp in less than 2 weeks, rather. Good news, guys, though. We're going to take a look at some of these. Look at that. Really big names. Todd Gurley, Lev Bell, just to name a few. A couple of really strong tackles. Mitchell Schwartz, Russell Coombs in that mix as well. But Cynthia Freeland's here, so she's going to help us fix all of that and find the best fit for these guys. Baldy on deck as well. Let's dive into some impact players still on the free agent market, starting with a couple of pass rushers. Justin Houston had 8 sacks last season. Where does he fit best in?
Well, when I went through and figured out my win share totals, meaning where they could provide the biggest uptick in wins for team, Atlanta popped up for me, for Houston. Why? Well, when you look to see what he does on 3rd down specifically, he still brings the heat. A 12% percentage in terms of getting pressure on third down, almost 12%. That was according to Next Gen Stats. That's really impactful in an area where Atlanta could really use some help. Also, when I look this year, because my man Baldy doesn't love sacks necessarily, he thinks they're a little misleading. So I went back and looked at number of key pressures he got, meaning there's sacks, but also in key pressure, he had like 21 of them on third down. So Baldy, there you go, little extra nugget for you.
Well, Cynthia, where did Justin Houston go to school? Now, he is a Georgia Bulldog. He is from Statesboro, Georgia. I agree with you, Cynthia. I think the Falcons make a lot of sense. They got Dante Fowler on one side. If you bring Justin Houston in, when I watched him the last 2 years in Indianapolis, Cynthia, he started 33 straight games for him, had 31 quarterback hits. He's been durable. Doesn't say too much. He lets his playing do the talking. I kind of like those kind of players. He might fit well in that new culture with the Atlanta Falcons. I agree with you, Cynthia.
I like when you guys are in agreement. It's great. All right, another pass rusher still on the market, Melvin Ingram, who missed 9 games last season. Where would the 3-time Pro Bowler have the biggest impact, Cynthia?
Well, you have to look before the injury from 2 years ago and see how he was so effective in when he didn't miss any games. I mean, he went 4 straight seasons without missing any. What I like about Melvin Ingram is, again, remember that number, 12%. He had a 12% pressure rate in those span of time where he didn't miss any time. So where do I like him? Kansas City. They need some help. Steve Spagnuolo loves to get the pressure. He loves to bring the heat. And last season, it was a little strategic, but they didn't do it like you usually see him doing. So for me, when I look at Melvin Ingram, I think he'd be a great fit there, again, assuming that he's completely healthy, because he's still got that get up and go along the edge. He has a great fast burst. First 3 yards traveled are very fast.
I'm a Melvin Ingram fan. He feels like he's the best athlete on the field every week. I mean, if it was playing the NBA basketball, he feels like he could take anybody off the dribble. He's a versatile player, Cynthia. He can line up and play middle linebacker. He does on short yards and goal line, as for the Chargers. He can play in a 3-4 system, a 4-3 system. So when I think about what's a good fit, what about Brian Flores in Miami, where they're building a beast in Miami with a lot of veteran players. They let Kyle Van Noy go, but this is a guy that can play with his hand down. He can stand up as an outside linebacker, and he's a great athlete. And he's a great culture guy. I mean, he loves to play the game of football. He's got a smile on his face all day, every day. I think Miami would be a good fit.
Baldy, you're speaking my language. I like this. All right, let's stay on the defensive side of the ball, but transition to linebacker. KJ Wright is still on the market, Cynthia. Where do you have him making the biggest impact?
Well, Seattle fans are really going to love me because he actually stays home in my model. That is the best place for him. Why? Because of how good he is in coverage. When you look to see the strategy that they employ and you look to see how he works in coverage alongside a guy like Jamal Adams, who really comes up front and blitzes, that means that coverage linebacker is a really important position for the Seahawks, meaning he drives the most uptick in wins for the Seattle Seahawks. For me, KJ Wright stays home.
Well, I can't disagree that much with you, Cynthia, but I'm going to. You know, because they have Jordan Brooks there, they drafted. He's on the field with Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams. That's sort of their linebacking core right now. But I think a competitor would be really smart by taking the services like the San Francisco 49ers, because they have watched him on tape practically every year, on every single game tape when they see him. We know he's a very smart player. We know that he takes good care of himself. He could plug him in a lot of different ways. Like you said, he can cover the tight end on a strong side linebacker role. He can play off the ball inside linebacker with Freddie Warner. There's a lot of ways that you can use KJ Wright. I think the 49ers might be smart in plucking him away from Seattle and putting him in a 49er uniform.
Baldy, that's exactly what I was thinking about. The compliment there with Fred Warner on that defense would be bananas. All right, thanks, Baldy. Cynthia, thank you, as always. If you want to check out the full article, head to NFL.com/Freeland. All right, so we've got a few notable players on new teams, of course. Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, they traded places. Carson Wentz reunited with his old OC in Indy. Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's the new commander-in-chief of the Washington offense. And J.J. Watt moved out to the desert. So Baldy and Lige, we just hit on some guys looking for teams there in that last segment. Let's talk about some guys who moved teams this offseason and who you are excited about seeing their impact with this new squad. So Lige, let's start with you. Which defensive player on a new squad are you hype about?
MJ, Carl Lawson to the New York Jets. And if you look at what Carl Lawson did last year, he didn't have the gaudy and crazy sack numbers, only 5.5 sacks. But he goes over to the New York Jets, Robert Saleh's defense, and that defense is predicated off the D-line creating havoc. If you look at what they have in the interior at defensive tackle, Quentin Williams, Sheldon Rankins, who they bring over from New Orleans, Foley Fatukowski, and then also John Franklin Myers, Carl Lawson is going to double his sack number because guys are going to push that pocket in the middle where quarterbacks can't step up and throw the ball. So instead of just getting 5.5 sacks and over 50 hits, he's going to get like 11 sacks. I'm excited to see Carl Lawson and the New York Jets in this defense.
I want to see what Patrick Peterson can do with the Minnesota Vikings, a team that I think is on the rise, that's building it the right way. I think they get a lot of players back on defense that were injured a year ago, like Eric Hendricks and Anthony Barr and Daniil Hunter, who sat out. They played a lot of young players last year, but I think Patrick Peterson can benefit from playing inside a dome, a loud dome at US Bank with a very good defensive line and a proven head coach that doubles as the defensive coordinator in Mike Zimmer. I'm anxious to see what Patrick Peterson does.
All right, Baldy. Well, let's talk about the offensive side of the ball now. Which offensive player on a new team are you excited to watch in 2021?
Well, you know, I'm right here in South Jersey, so I've seen Carson Wentz, you know, every game since he came here 5 years ago. And to see him go to Indianapolis, which I believe is a playoff-ready team. They just need excellent play from the quarterback position. And I want to see if the mechanical issues he had last year playing that position are going to get fixed, simply because he's going to a new team, new uniform, a coach that he really admires in Frank Reich. They need him to play at a high level because everything around him, the offensive line, the backs, the defense, is ready to go. Can Carson Wentz get him to the postseason? That's his job.
Well, Baldy, I'm most excited to see one of my favorite teammates of all time, Ryan Fitzpatrick with the Washington football team, a.k.a. Fitzmagic. And anybody that knows Fitzmagic, man, you're never out of the game with this guy at quarterback. He's a gunslinger, and he has a lot of good offensive weapons, a lot of young offensive weapons. If you look at Antonio Gibson at running back, they bring over Curtis Samuel from the Carolina Panthers, a really good young receiver. Scary Terry McLaurin at receiver is a great receiver as well. And then Logan Thomas at tight end is an underrated tight end. But right here, you see the clip versus the Oakland Raiders. He comes into the game showing that Fitzmagic, getting his face mask pulled, throws the ball deep down the field, keeps them in the game. They go on to win that game. If he can limit those turnovers, I like Fitzmagic in Washington. I think they can win back-to-back NFC East crowns.
Thank you, Lige, because I'm one of those people who will not ever stand for any Fitzmagic slander of any kind. All right, guys, thanks.
No.
For you at home, pop quiz. Who's the best wide receiver in the NFL? Easy. Whoever's open. And the closer you look at that NFL game film, the more you...
Calvin Ridley was by himself. Wide open Hopkins on his 14th catch of the day. Welcome to the Valley Nuke. Roethlisberger floats for Juju Smith-Schuster. Touchdown.
We got some Juju jumping cereals. It's lit. We out.
All right, time now for Baldy's Breakdown. Baldy, you're breaking down your top 3 route runners. Let's start with your third spot guy.
Many guys worthy of this title here, MJ. I'm starting with Keenan Allen with the Chargers. Their #1 wide receiver, that touchdown against Buffalo, splitting the zone coverage. But this is a guy that can just put the foot in the ground and separate. And whether it was with Philip Rivers or Justin Herbert, let me show you what I'm talking about here against the Raiders a year ago. Here he is in motion against Trayvon Diggs of the Raiders. And he's going to sell this shallow cross and then bounce it right back outside. And when you separate like that, you give your quarterback an open target. #2, Devontae Adams. I mean, this guy's ability to separate from the best coverage in the league is almost unparalleled. He had to wait his turn to get on the field in Green Bay, and now he has turned that into a true #1 wide receiver. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's go to the NFC Championship game against Carlton Davis, the #1 corner of Tampa, like Allen Iverson on a crossover dribble. Just crosses over, beats him easily in the end zone for that touchdown. The #1 router in this league, Stephon Diggs. Not a surprise, MJ, that he led the league in receiving this past season. This guy breaks ankles out there like he just did in Pittsburgh. This guy is a really special player. Josh Allen recognized it this year. But let me show you what I'm talking about against Seattle here. Jamal Adams is going to come up there and try and jam him at the line. He beats the jam, then he takes him inside, and then he takes him outside. Just an easy target for Josh Allen to find. I mean, these guys are skilled artists at what they do. They're fun to watch, they're hard to study, and they're more difficult to cover. Really great players and really great artists at what they do, MJ.
Waldy, I know we only gave you 3 spots, but tough to argue with a list like that. All right, thanks, Waldy. 5 edge rushers heard their names called in the first round of the draft this year, with the first off the board getting to stay home in South Florida as the Dolphins selected to use Jalen Phillips. Plus 3 of the final 5 picks of the first round were also guys expected to get to the passer. Lige, come on in here, my friend. Who is your favorite rookie edge rusher as we get ready for the season?
Well, MJ, the guy I'm most excited about, a lot of people probably don't know about, is Peyton Turner out of the University of Houston. This guy's a big specimen, 6'6", 270 pounds. I've had the privilege to watch his development the last 2 years because I call the UCF games, and Houston's in that conference. He does a great job with his hands, coming around the edge, bending for a guy that's 270 with that double swipe move. And he has long arms. He does a great job of knocking offensive linemen back, getting separation, getting in the backfield, creating havoc. But I think he'll have a lot of success because he's playing opposite of Cameron Jordan. If you look at what Trey Hendrickson did last year, had a career year, over 13 sacks playing opposite of Cameron Jordan because he's going to get so much attention. So right away, he's going to get a lot of one-on-one pass rush versus offensive tackles. I think he'll do well in that system. They missed a few years ago with Marcus Davenport. I think they righted the ship this year when they took Peyton Turner in the first round.
Yeah, and he'll get the benefit in reps, like you mentioned, but also learning from one of the best guys out there at the position. All right, thank you, Lige. Some of the best nicknames of former NFL players include Crazy Legs, Concrete Charlie, the Galloping Ghost, Night Train, and of course, Beast Mode. But that was then. What about now? How well do you know current NFL nicknames? We're taking the test next.